This was a topic that kind of came into my head and something that I've been mulling over for a while. I have to moderate Reddit. I look at my YouTube comments, and I look at perceptions of people, and it's really interesting. I'll just list out a few. Scar is tremendously biased for Mango. S2J can't edge guard. Um, I can't shut up about puns. So I've given three examples here where perceptions that still resonate in the community, especially with when it ripples around, and whether or not you know the personality behavior has changed. People are still going to associate people with certain things no matter what. So what I mean is that no matter how much Scar can, let's say Scar plays a match. Let's go back to Genesis 3 Plup Mango. This was a set that I thought that Scar um, commentated pretty well, and I thought it was pretty reasonable. But like, what happens is that because there's this impression and this perspective that people have Scar's biased, whenever we're gonna use the information that we collect and process to confirm our bias, even when it remains untrue. And what I mean is that Scar could say 19 statements about Plup, but he could say like 5 statements about Mango, and people will latch on to confirm their bias to say that Scar is biased for Mango. And there have been some sets, recently where Scar has deliberately, tried to commentate the other side. It goes unnoticed, and people will ultimately say, like, why is Scar so biased? Like, I hate when he commentates, he's always biased for Mango. And I'm not trying to say that Scar, Scar and Mango are friends, and, I can see bias in it, or some favoritism rather, but to compare Scar in 2016 in his current state, where he's continuing to improve every week, to where 2014 it was a lot more blatant. I think it's a little bit unfair to put that 2014 perception of Scar's biases of Mango and put it on 2016 Scar whenever he commentates and may make a comment on a match that happens to have Mango on it. One example was when SFAT said, "Oh, this looks dangerous for Mango fans," and people thought that Scar said that, but that was actually SFAT who said that in the match against in Plup and Mango at Smash Summit Game 5. Scar actually didn't say that, but people will automatically associate their initial impressions with it. Likewise for me, if you look at the data, like, I haven't really said many puns, and still that notion's carried over to me. And granted, I do deserve it. There was a time where it was really excessive, but other commentators have probably used a lot more puns than me, but I'm still hold the reputation as the pun guy, even though I've deliberately tried to avoid it. So why does this matter for Smash? Why does this matter for analysis? I think it's important because there are some people on one end of the spectrum that say, like, that will jump at every notion and, like, will take the most recent. I guess let's say this end is like recency bias. People look at Mewtwo King Armada and say, like, oh, based on Smash Summit, I think Mewtwo King will beat Armada every single time they play, which to me sounds a little bit ridiculous. And there's the other end of the spectrum of, like, no, like, Mewtwo King sucks, he'll never beat Armada. And it's important to kind of temper, yes, like, and evaluate things in context and in sample size, because for me, the longest complaint I've had personally of Mewtwo King, over the years, is his weaknesses against floaty characters, which, still remains largely true, and the data supports that. But now with new data presented to me where he 3-0s Armada, goes close with the Hungry Box, I now have to temper that. And I have to temper and avoid looking at awful situations that Mewtwo King has put himself in neutral, and say, like, hey, like, well, also I have to keep in mind, look, he won. He played marvelously in the neutral game, and he's improved. So I have to change my first impression bias, or what I have as current impression, to a little bit more tempered with the updated data. And I think that's really important to do, because oftentimes we let our personal biases cloud our judgment. And I think the classic moment of SUJ is the biggest one here, where SUJ has been phenomenal in edge guarding, and if there's an opportunity for get it, he more often than not he does get it. But there are cases where the Fox has so many options that there is absolutely no way for S2J to cover everything. And when he misses, what the commentators do, what Twitch chat does, and what the general sentiment is that S2J is bad at edge guarding. But if you put Wizzy there, you put another Falcon there, and they miss that exact same thing because you can't cover every option of Fox, they're just going to be like, they're not going to have that, they're not going to paint a biased picture and say like, oh yeah, Wizzy's awful at edge guarding. But for Johnny, so all in all, I think it's really important that we take data with sample size, but at the same time we have to be careful and look at not just the data that confirms our preconceived notions, but also look at the data holistically and see how it aligns with us and whether or not it challenges us to change our perceptions or evaluations of things. And so this is something that I've been trying to do. Admittedly, I'm not perfect. I have my own personal biases. I have my own personal dispositions. I have my own private conversations that most other people don't have that lean me a certain way than what other people have. I see more different things. So sometimes, for example, like I can watch at Smash Summit all these players playing friendlies and say like, wow, these players are playing phenomenally, and carry those biases into a tournament set where I'm watching them and they're not playing as well. I think another classic one is, the perception that we carry for Armada and Mango. This is kind of sidetracking. Armada is expected to do everything well. And, when he misses something, it's like, oh, wow, like, let me see. Like, we don't give him credit for what he does well because it's expected from him. And this kind of hurts because when excellence is done, so well and so consistently, then it's no longer praise. I give it the analogy of when you have like two kids, let's say you're raising kids, one kid's always a troublemaker and the other kid, is like the golden straight A student. You're at a certain point, you're not going to give praise to the kid that gets straight A's, but the kid that's a troublemaker, that's inconsistent, you're going to give him the most praise in the world and say that guy's amazing just because he got an A in a string of mediocrity. And so I think it's important, when we evaluate people at the top, and I think Mango fans are the most guilty of it, is like we'll say like if Mango loses, it's mainly because he was inconsistent. It's like, oh, if he played better, he would have won. And we always herald the play of Mango versus somebody that's consistent to like if the more consistent player, let's say Hungrybox or Armada win, it's because Mango played bad, and if Mango wins, it's because he totally outplayed Armada and Hungrybox, and there was no possibility that Hungrybox and Armada just played bad. And so it's really important to keep all our notions and recognize them at the end of the day. And I just really hope that, maybe, not everybody's going to be as hardcore, as a Smash fanatic to think about all these things in context, but I think it's important that if you are serious about Smash and you want to have an honest evaluation of how the gameplay is going and how the tempo is going, to keep all these things in mind.